sitting there going, oh, well, we're only supposed to defend this position, and the GM sends in an infantry squad to try to kill you. You successfully defeat the infantry squad. Then at that point, the GM determines that, oh, I guess this fighting force can actually hold that position. Therefore, the enemy is going to put more resources into taking that position, such as snipers and artillery strikes. Two things the players are incapable of countering because they're just sitting there waiting for the enemy to come to them. So at that point, I highly doubt the players have weapons that exceed a range of 100 meters. And even if they did, that's a sniper in the woods who's probably well hidden, and probably more than one sniper team. Plus they would have more fire support with more infantry coming in. And in addition to that, artillery strikes, if the GM wanted. So that's not the GM being brutal, that's the GM being realistic here. If you're sitting there holding 1 point, and you have proven to the enemy that you can hold that 1 point, they're not just going to keep funneling dudes in there for you to shoot. They're going to bombard the crap out of that place. Really depends on how much they want it and how they want it, which is either it is possible. Oh, I see. So that's my spiel on take action and plan, don't just react. No, this is essentially a war game. Well, it's not a full-on war game. This is more like a narrative war game experience. So you still have to. You don't have to. Well, I mean, you have to worry about the combat because that's kind of the main deal with this. Is that you want to worry about the combat situation. So you want to be aware of what position you're getting yourself into, what your objective is, and how you're going to accomplish it. Don't just run in there blind. So. I think that's about it in my little advice on running combat tactics. Assigning missions. Alright, so you got your primary mission that comes from your commander. And then from there, maybe you pick up some secondary missions from allied forces. So let's say, again, up there my example, if you came across a squad of infantry that were trying to defend a place and you came in to help them, maybe their objective isn't done and they need your assistance to pursue their objective. That can be a secondary objective there. Or maybe there's a secondary objective example would be another one where you don't actually get the objective notification. You're like just walking past and there's a village being assaulted by orcs and there's people still in there, so that's a secondary objective right there. The players can either decide to go defend the village or not. It's really up to them. So that's how you assign secondary objectives. Oof. And then let's see here. Final thing would be like balance, would be to avoid giving players items that are too powerful. So first of all, tell players not to min-max. The issue with min-maxing is that it got so bad in my previous only war game, is that so this would be their stats. So let me show you an example. So if they wanted to mid-max in only war, the best way to fight is probably at range, arguably. And then they just maxed out ballistic skill. They spent all their XP on a ballistic skill. And then let's say they also got like dodge it like trained or something. So the issue with this is they have tons of skills still untrained. That is the primary issue of mid-max. So I would ask them to, alright, so that you're walking through a minefield. I need you to roll awareness to figure out where the mines are. Oh, I do. Oh, you don't have it trained? So it's a 14. So let's just roll that. Oh, you failed. You stepped on a mine and you died, and you expect the GM to help you somehow. So and then let's see here. Well, that's just an example of that. And this happened a lot in my only war campaign. It wasn't like once or twice. This happened a lot. They would be like, oh, we don't have that trained. And I'm just saying common skills that would definitely be used, such as navigate surface, pilot vehicle, command. Deceive is used to trick enemies, sometimes tactically, but let's see here. Parry, well, that's not really a common thing, but Medicae is more like a common thing. I don't know why people force only the medic to take Medicae, but it's important for everyone to have that in case the medic gets shot. So you might want to have everyone should at least get Medicae at known, is my argument. At least at known. At some point, or at least one other person, just so you have a secondary backup med in case the first one gets killed. No one took stealth, so they always got seen, but they would always like argue that, oh, I want to move cautiously and slow and very silently, and I'll be like, okay, make a stealth check, and they were like, no, I'm not being stealthy, I'm just moving very quietly and slowly and being unseen by the enemy. That is a stealth check. You need stealth trained in order to actually use stealth. I mean, to use stealth properly. Alright, so then let's see here. So that's the reason why mid-maxing is bad. Also, the reason why mid-maxing is bad is because I think once or twice a player had really low tech use skill, but he still wanted to do something. He was doing something very simple like opening a door. So he was in the middle of asking the GM, which was me, how to open the door and stuff. And I was going, alright, yeah, this will be this DC. And then the tech priest out of nowhere was like, oh yeah, I can do that super easily, as he just basically pushed the other player aside and just opened the door with his multi-key. Really quick with his ridiculously high score. So that is an issue. This is called being overpowered or just being an ass. I don't know. Protagonist mentality, I think it was put, where you just take over other people's checks because you just have a higher stat. Oh, my stream restarted for some reason. That's weird. Alright, so don't take over other people's checks just because you have a hard number in it. That goes into, once again, the reason why mid-max characters are bad is because they do that. Their stat is super high, so they just go. They would either go, I will push you out of the way to do that skill test, or I'm not going to do any skill test because I don't have points in it. Those are the two mentalities I kept running into in my only war campaign. Let's see here. So, and then I would say avoid giving them So, avoid giving players high damage. Well, actually, not high damage. Avoid giving them weapons that, on high levels of degrees of success, they get high damage and more attacks. That makes it super easy for them to shred through enemies, which means that you have to field more enemies to make an encounter fit your idea of a dangerous encounter. Whereas if like all the players have las guns, then like 2 orc squads is probably plenty of danger for them. If they have a multi-las, then like 3 orc squads or 4 might have to be summoned in order to actually put up a fight. So at that rate, you're doing a little power creep. It's too much math to handle, is my point. It's too much work, and then on top of that, players might just dig in and wait for that player with the high damage weapon or heavy weapon to do all the work. This is different for rocket launchers because it's a one-shot weapon, whereas a sniper rifle has like 10 or 15 bullets in it, so you're not going to reload anytime soon, plus that's the accurate quality. So I did give them a sniper rifle in this game, but it's an option as a main weapon, so they can either take that or they'll have to lose another item instead, but they could probably work their way around it and still get it, but that's fine. Sniper rifles aren't that overpowered. They're still a single shot weapon, but they just do a lot of damage to that single target. So probably once per turn they might end up killing something, versus the heavy weapons, which is probably once per turn they might end up killing multiple things. That's kind of the difference there. But I would still avoid giving them those things. It really depends. But there's really no substitute for long range combat weapon other than a sniper rifle. There's no real substitute for that. But for the heavy weapons, there's plenty of substitutes for that, because you can either use a las gun and just fire at the full auto rating, which is only like 3 shots, which is so much more easily manageable than 10 shots of damage with 1d10 at 6 damage a shot. That is so much harder to deal with in balance. Not that I really worry about balance in Warhammer 40k. I usually just actually I do worry about a bit much. So MIU interface must be trained, and weapon will not work. It cannot be a heavy weapon. I want to say that it could work with a heavy weapon with the compact modification, but I'm still going to say like no, because that's still like a free action to shoot. So basic weapons, pistols, I'm not even sure I want to give them a basic weapon in that thing. Yeah, I'm just going to say no basic. So only like, well actually that just makes it a ballistic mechadendrite at that rate. So I guess I'll remove that. So there's an item called the ballistic mechadendrite, which is basically any sort of pistol weapon can be placed into a mechadendrite. This is way more balanced than the MIU interface, because the ballistic mechadendrite still requires a proper attack roll to shoot, because you're not gaining any extra bonuses from any of those sources. And then on top of that, it's harder to reload because it's on a mechadendrite, therefore it's not in your hand, so you can't easily reload it. It still attacks on a free action though. But you can only make one attack per turn, and since it's small, it doesn't do that much damage. It does more like manageable damage. So let's see here. This right here is my little caveat on how to balance out the MIU interface, or just not give it to them. If they complain, don't give it to them. That's my hard stance on the MIU interface. They must be trained in it for it to work. It cannot be a heavy weapon, or just don't give it to them if they whine and complain about that. Alright, let's see here. Let's go into how I would run. So the way that I run Warhammer 40k is the best way I can describe it is that I like to run it as I like to run my Warhammer 40k games as a dark comedy or an episode of the Venture Brothers. So this is to prevent people from getting too stressed out from the very grim, dark, and combat heavy, or like I was serious situations they will probably find themselves in. but I'd at the same time want to encourage them to not make it a giant comedy show. So balance seriousness with comedy. Much can be bad. So I want to balance out. I want to make sure players know that they can balance out being serious and comedy. Or no, I want them to balance out being serious with comedy. Why is it? I'm talking and trying to type at the same time. Balance being serious. So the reason why you want to balance this out is that too much seriousness can ruin the game, because then it becomes kind of toxic, I would say, or just not fun to play. Because if a comic, putting this in very simple Warhammer 40k terms, if a commissar would just gun down any person that would turn away and run away from a fight, and if you're taking the game super seriously, and a player stops and goes, "We're not winning this fight," pop. They would have been shot right there. If the player says, "Oh, we should fall back and get a better position," they would also get shot for that if you're being super serious about it. So that's why you shouldn't take the setting so seriously, or the game. And then additionally, you don't want to be too funny about it, because then people might just not take anything seriously, to the point where they're just like repeating memes they read on the internet, like the flesh is weak every 5 seconds, and that gets super annoying. Or how guardsmen are cannon fodder, and that's all there is to it. That's also super annoying, especially in a campaign all about playing guardsmen, as super counterproductive to the whole campaign setting if you're just sitting there shit talking guardsmen. So let's see here. Don't be a stereotype. So, don't be a stereotype is one of my rules that I try to tell people when they're playing in my game, is that just because you're a sister of battle does not equal you're crazy and you burn everything. You know, there's different types of sisters of battle. You can still put thought into your character without, just following the lore. So I like to encourage players to be a individual, not just a person from this faction. Because if you played a Space Marine in a campaign where you had to like sneak around and figure out where the heretics are hiding at, and you want to stick to the let's see here. Let's say you're a Black Templar. So as far as I can tell about Black Templars, they basically just burn and kill all the heretics and Xenos. They're very Puritan focus or stuff like that. So there would be no like wiggle room with them in the lore about doing investigations on figuring out where chaos is. So let's say, as a situation, you figure out an informant to lead you to your actual objective of eliminating a chaos cult, but in order to get there you have to talk to this informant. You go and meet with this informant, and you're a Black Templar Space Marine, undercover somehow. Don't put too much thought into it, because it's actually really simple to pull that off, because there are mutants in the Warhammer 40k setting, and that's what my point is that the person that Black Templar meets under the cover of darkness is a mutant who is like something Black Templars would not allow to live. So instead of immediately killing the mutant, he would first ask the mutant where the Chaos Cult is, and then it would be a very big character building moment there to determine if killing this Imperial citizen, even though they're a mutant, it may be the correct choice to let them live, just because they're helping the Imperium and they have vowed to continue helping the Imperium. Or the very fact that you're there to protect Imperial citizens, not just murder everything. So that's something people seem to not get about Warhammer 40k, is that when you're in the Inquisition, you're not running around murdering everything just because it looks different. You're there to specifically target the things that go bump in the night that are trying to eliminate Imperial citizens. But that's kind of beside the point of a only war campaign. In a only war campaign situation, it would be more like Imperial Guardsmen just shooting civilians for like no reason other than they're in their way. That's a really stupid reason. It's really stupid. Don't even know why you wouldn't bother with that. But it has happened about... How many times did I run that encounter? I think it happened twice. There is a encounter in Against the Savages where it essentially is the native population of Skyrene. They somehow managed to survive the constant orc onslaughts and have hidden away. They have very poor gear, and so they confront the party in some sort of weird intimidation situation in order to basically rob them of their food. So the book doesn't really state this, but I essentially wrote in that they just want your food. And for some reason, every single group of players immediately went to let's just kill them, or let's trick them into doing the fighting for us. It seems weird to me, because it seems like you're the professional soldiers, so why don't you go do the fighting? Why are you trying to kill these civilians? You could give them your food and then go do the fighting for them. That's your fucking job. I had to tell them this. I think I told them that, but I don't think they got the message. Point is, though, is that sometimes people are too stuck in the lore and don't seem to like see the things that are directly in front of them, that you're trying to play a role-playing game and you need to be more flexible than burn the characters, the witch and the Xeno, because that doesn't really make for a very good story, and you're essentially just reading lore at that point. So why even playing a tabletop RPG if you're just going to be murdering everything? So I guess that's a little bit of a rant, but that's my view on it. Don't play a tabletop RPG system, especially only war or Warhammer 40k, if all you're going to do is obsess over killing everything, because at that point you're not really playing the narrative part. Let's see here. What else? How else do I run my games? Well, typically going back to the playing with tactics versus players who don't. I have noticed that players have trouble figuring out what to do in situations, either prompted or unprompted. So if you notice players like going or just being quiet or saying stupid stuff, you should probably step in. So the first situation is if players are trying to like solve a situation. Let's say you're Imperial Guard squad and you're trying to assault a fortification, and they're going, let's just go in through the front door. You can just be quiet and let them go in through the front door and watch them die or maybe win. Or you can go roll common war. And then if they succeed on that test, you can go, well, based on your degree of success, you can ask me a number of questions equal to your degree of success. Or you can just give them this bit of information that going through the front door is a terrible idea, and you could easily flank around and do something else. You can easily give them those 2 points of information through a skill test or just voluntarily giving it to them. Additionally, if players are just standing around, say players are sitting around trying to hold a position, or actually more a simple example is that say players are making camp for the night, and no player has mentioned they're going on guard or staying up late to make sure nothing assaults their camp at night, and you're on a death world. It's very important that you go, hey, you're on a death world, is someone going to stay watch? You can just give them that bit of information. You have to make them do a skill test for that. Sure you're doing the thinking for them, but at some point you probably have to do that. It's really up to you. In my personal opinion, I will happily give players advice on options and stuff they can do if they're having trouble understanding the situation, or they're new to Warhammer 40k or whatever reason. But if players are like purposely not caring about what's going on and they're like, whatever man, I'll just do this, or they're being basically idiots or toxic, then I'll just let them do stupid stuff and watch them die, and they'll be like, alright, I'm not running this anymore for you. That's my 2 things on that. Alright, an example of something really stupid that I let happen. So, players were stuck in an underground mine. In order to get through the security checkpoint, there was a giant door blocking it. The players had to call in and give a password to lift the lockdown. And for whatever reason that I cannot justify, that I just do not understand, is that they let the tech priest call the security checkpoint and say a random word and go, that's the password. And then I was like, no, that's not the password. That just raises even more alarms. And then at that point, he was like, well, I want to talk to your manager because I'm a tech priest of blah, 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 blah. So the main issue here is that I guess I'm pretty sure he understood this. If they were paying attention, they should have understood this, is that the people they were calling was literally the enemy faction. And then their manager that he wanted to speak to was their boss. So what do you think is going to fucking happen at that point? My god, it was so stupid. They basically just gave away their whole thing. They gave away their position and what they were trying to do. All at the same time. So that was so stupid that I couldn't justify them burning a fate point to survive it, and I didn't want to sit there and shovel in. I did not want to sit there and send in infantry squad after infantry squad trying to kill them, because that's also pointless. I'm just gonna go, okay, you all die, because I'm not gonna bother wasting my time running that scenario out because you guys are just that stupid to guess the password and then tell the enemy that you're there, at this exact area that you're locked in. Also, it's really stupid for the enemy to open a door to send in people to kill you when the whole point of you calling them is to get them to open the door. If you can't get through the door, then there's no reason for them to send people after you to kill you. They'll just leave the door shut. So, it's a really weird situation that they were trying to do something that they thought was probably smart, but was really stupid. It's just like, the door's shut. Why would they need to go in there and try to kill you? They should just leave you out there. Eventually you'll probably get through, but by that time you'll either be dead or tired, or they went and built up fortifications on the other side of that door. Either way, that door is shut and they don't need to open it to kill you or get rid of you. So that's my little thing, is that players are reasonably trying to play your game and trying to learn how to play it or trying to resolve the issues, you should definitely help them, either by asking them to make a skill test, or just giving them information voluntarily, or just letting them, well, my favorite idea is to just let them bounce ideas off of you. So I usually tell people, hey, just bounce ideas off of me and I'll let you know what the probable result of that idea might be. So that seems to help a lot more, as players were like, so can we sneak into this place? And I'll be like, yeah, but you need to make sure you look like you belong there. And then they'll be like, okay, so how can we get disguises? And I'll say, well, some of those people go on a coffee break occasionally, so, and the player's like, oh, okay, cool, so I can probably knock them unconscious, steal their outfit, and then sneak in there. I'll be like, yeah, that'll work out. Let's see here. Occasionally when they go on their coffee break, they head down this way over here. You can probably stake that place out and catch them off guard. You know, that's a simple back and forth that I didn't really have to make them do a skill test, and they were easily able to bounce an idea off of me. However, if the players are just like, we're gonna charge in there and murder everything, and I'll be like, that's suicide, and then they respond with, well, we're guardsmen. And then at that point, I'm like, alright, I guess I'm done running this game. That's my direct response, and I'm not going to change that. If you're going to be that stupid, then no, I'm not even going to bother running it. It's not fun to sit there and watch people do stupid stuff, running there, kill things and die pointlessly. That's not what Imperial... Well, that's not what my campaigns are about, at least. In my D&D 5e campaign thing, or how to do D&D 5e, My explanation on how I run campaigns is essentially the hero's journey. And then I would probably couple this with generic war movie. So the hero's journey is essentially a blueprint, or sort of like a it's like a common theme through most superhero movies or superhero stories. You have a call to action, some sort of magical MacGuffin helps you do that thing, you meet a mentor, you go fight the enemy, something goes wrong, and then as a result of things going wrong, you still go, we can do this if we pull together. So some sort of change of character, some sort of hell-raising speech or something like that happens, and then you go do the thing, you fight the villain, and then you win. That's generally what the hero's journey is. Watch Star Wars or Guardians of the Galaxy to figure out how that actually plays out. And then generic war movie is like not good, like Fury. The generic World War theme is essentially based on World War II movies and stuff like that. Is that you have two armies fighting each other, but it's less about those two armies fighting each other, and it's more about the one squad of people, or one or two characters, or three characters, or this main guy who's in the squad. It's about that. So, well, in this case, it'll probably be about a squad of characters who all are thrust into the sudden and violent aspect of war, and have to fight against not very big odds, but probably dangerous situations. So like taking the beach of Normandy, that would probably be, I think wait, was it the beach of Normandy? I might be making a mistake in my war stuff. I think it's the beach of Normandy. The giant beach where they had to like make landfall on boats, and then they had to like trek across the beach to a fenced-in area, had to climb all the fence. It was like in Call of Duty multiple times, so that's why I remember it so vividly, even though I wasn't there. I played video games, more video games a lot. So basically, that type of situation is essentially like a small squad that seems like a bunch of nobodies somehow against all the odds push through on some sort of mission that's weird. Let's see, I'll probably type this out actually. So for a movie, so squad of nobodies. So there's two types of squads. There's the squad of nobodies or squad of specialists. That's usually how they do it, is that there's either a squad of nobodies or a squad of specialists. And then from there, they get a mission. The mission is either a covert mission or a generic mission. So the covert mission is that they're doing like a very special operation where they have to do it undercover at night, or they have to do it under secret, something like that. And then another is generic mission mixed with a covert mission. Actually, I probably should put hidden objective. So covert mission is usually they know they're trying to be secretive or sneak in there, be stealthy. And then a generic mission is just them doing stuff like, you gotta take the beach of Normandy, or you have to travel from point A to point B in this tank column. And Fury, that's a pretty good war movie, Fury. Or it's this one right here, the last one, which is a generic mission mixed with a more complex hidden objective that the main characters don't know about, and they find out during the mission suddenly, and that pisses them off and causes problems. Let's see here. So, and then basically throughout the course of the big fight scenes, during the lull of the action, you meet the characters more and you get to know them. So And then during the high points of combat and action, so generally during like the high points of combat and action, you get to see how skilled they are at what they do, or maybe they're not that skilled at it, but they're still doing it, they're still trying. And then when things get really bad, they show this like heroic moment where one guy goes, I'll hold him here, the rest of you guys retreat, and I'll be right there with you. But then you know he's not going to be there with you because he's staying there by himself to lay down covering fire for everyone else. So that's like a little heroic moment that happens in the movie. This normally happens like almost all the time, some sort of heroic sacrifice. So actually I should probably reword this to this is more like how vulnerable, or so actually this right here would actually be the point in which, like, during like the first part of the movie, or probably during the middle act, or any sort of point where it's between where it's at the end or like the beginning or middle, they show how skilled the character is at combat or the horrors of war and stuff like that. And then by the end, there's usually like a heroic sacrifice. At the beginning, at the beginning, there's normally like a shock of war, I guess you would call it, where they introduce the character to their first actual war, if they're like a new fresh face, or they introduce the audience to the war. And then it goes into like highs and low points of them, where the low points are usually where they're talking and you figure stuff out about the character, or in high points of combat where it's just them fighting and showing off how either they're vulnerable and how possible it is for them to fail, or how skilled they are at the task. And then there's the heroic sacrifice moment, where they have this moment in the story where they can either decide to do something that will probably get them killed but it'll save everyone else, or do something that's really dangerous and very scary, I guess, for lack of a better word, but they do it anyways. Stuff like that. And then let's see here. And then at the end of the story, usually not many make it out alive, or no one makes it out alive. Or those that do and those that do become veterans and move on to lead another group of nobodies into the next fray of combat. That's normally how the plot points of a war movie goes, and that's kind of what I was trying to follow. So, an example of this, and this is a reason why toxic behavior is down here with a tech priest. This is the reason why this is here. This is a story for this one. So, there was a tech priest in an Imperial Guard squad. He kept acting like he was better than everyone else, and he kept repeating the flesh is weak and stuff like that. So it came to the point where he was in a tank, well, a Chimera with a pilot. The pilot failed his fear test to keep driving the tank, and the tech priest was in there shooting one of the guns and everything, and a Orc Knob was going after the party, or everyone else who was up on the wall, and all the orcs were charging them. The tech priest basically aggroed the Orc Knob, and then it was at that point the Orc Knob got close enough to trigger the fear response in the driver. So the driver got feared and therefore stunned for a certain amount of time. The player also got stunned as well, or at least some players got stunned as well. So the tech priest, though, however, got over his stun faster, and was unable to move the tank. Whoa, sorry. First of all, the driver was still stunned, so at this point, and his hands were like frozen on the controls of the vehicle and he wasn't moving. Meanwhile, the tech priest was firing the multi-las. He got off of that and was trying to get the vehicle to move. And I told him that he's unable to talk reason into the operator because he failed his command roles and other sort of roles to basically encourage him to shake out of his fear test. And this operator was not a player character, therefore he couldn't spend a fate point to get out to remove the stun state quality. So he was just a generic comrade, so that's why I ruled it that way. So the tech priest, in my mind, has several options. He had the option to keep firing one of the various weaponry on the Chimera, which he had a flamer. He had a multi-las up top, and also a las gun array on the sides. He also had the opportunity to get out of the tank and sneak away. He also had the opportunity to narratively say, I just force his hands to move the tank anyways, rather than trying to force his hands off the tank controls, because those are two separate things. If you ever been in like a car, for example, and someone has their foot on the gas, you could force them to put their foot on the brakes. So, but forcing them to remove their foot from the gas is probably arguably harder to pull off. That was my mentality that I didn't tell him because he didn't ask. So I waited patiently to figure out what he would do. So his solution to getting this tank to move, well, actually I'm not really sure what he was trying to accomplish at that point. The tank wasn't going to move because the pilot operator was frozen with fear. He could have done any number of things, but he was repeatedly failing at trying to encourage the squad member to resist the effects of the fear. And I didn't give him a penalty. I gave him basically a standard role, but I didn't give him any benefits because of the way he was acting. Because he kept saying the flesh was weak and other stuff like that, basically talking down to his fellow guardsmen and saying that he's not part of the squad. I actually didn't give him any penalties for that, but I just didn't let him have any bonuses to try to encourage him to shake off the fear. So his next step, because he failed to get the operator to no longer be feared, is to just shoot him in the head with his ballistic mechadendrite. So he did that, killed the guardsmen, and then they didn't have an operator in the squad anymore. So I should probably point out the fact that they only had one operator, only one person skilled at driving the vehicle, and that was the person he just shot in the head. So he shot him in the head, and the reasoning he gave me after the fact was that if he will not serve, he will serve on the firing line, something along those lines, which is something a commissar would say. And that's why, once again, I go back to the commissar thing of don't be executing people without an actual reason or little reason. If someone succumbs to a fear test, executing them is not a solution. That just adds more stuff to the problem, especially if you have a squad size of 10 people. I also want to note that the people up, the other people in the squad failed their fear test as well. So he would have to sit there and execute them as well, which of course he wouldn't do that to another player. So it seems very hypocritical to execute a NPC who is also very valuable on the team as a pilot. So after he executed the NPC, he wasted so much time trying to get the NPC to resist the effects of fear. Then he wasted time shooting them in the head, and then he had to pry his hands off the controls once he was dead. Because at that point I was like, well, this is kind of a karma moment right here. He could have done anything else, but you chose to shoot him, so I'm going to say that he's now blocking the controls and you have to move the body out of the way. So he spends an action doing that, and then by the time he's done doing that, the orc knob has climbed on top of the tank and reached down inside and grabbed the tech priest. And So he had a reaction left. So he could have spent his reaction on dodging the grab. I gave him an opportunity to resist the grab with a opposed strength test, I believe. And then instead of trying to dodge it or something else with his reaction, he chose to use his ballistic mechadendrite to attempt to shoot the orc. So he shot the orc knob and hit him, and then he died the next turn because the orc knob then used him as basically a baseball bat and took several melee attacks against the hull of the Chimera tank. So the tech priest was basically broken to pieces. I actually think he survived it though. I'm pretty sure he survived it because his next thing happened as well. So he did survive the orc knob beating the crap out of him, surprisingly. After surviving the orc knob beating the crap out of him, the rest of the squad had to pick up the slack once they resisted fear effects. They started shooting the orc knob and were easily able to dispatch it through basically teamwork and shooting it down. So my point is, that moment where he had the choice between shooting the operator and doing something else, that right there is one of the heroic moments that I had planned, either the hero's journey or in a typical war movie. I mean not planned, but more like that's usually what I do, is I give a opportunity for people to either do something stupid or be heroic. In that case, he decided to do something more stupid, which was stay in that same situation and wait for people to come kill him while killing his ally. That was stupid. So after he did that and got his ass kicked, he was horribly crippled and broken, so he had critical wounds and everything. So he wasn't dead, and then at that point his character was, I can't remember exactly the critical effects he had, but I'm pretty sure they had broken limbs. So at that point, there was another moment in the story for him to make a decision. He could either figure out a way for him to make his character still usable by cobbling together some sort of wheelchair or crutch or something like that, so he can still help his allies. And he just had to bounce the idea off of me. But instead, he goes, well, I might as well just stop playing now because I don't want to have to make a whole new character. And I was like, but your character's still alive. Well, actually, now that I remember, he had to burn a fate point to survive the encounter. I forgot that. So he had to burn another fate point because his first character died because of something else stupid. His second character died because of what I just told you just now, so he had to burn a fate point for that one. He said, I don't want to burn a fate point for that because it makes your character weaker. And his mindset for making your character weaker, as far as I can tell, is that you reduces the number of times you can make a reroll, because that's what fate points do. You basically get rerolls with those. So I told him as a response to that you can burn the fate point, but then you have to figure out a way in order to move around. And before I could really get into the details on how to roleplay out having broken limbs and stuff like that, he instead goes, well, I might as well not play anymore because effectively I have gone through 2 characters now, and I don't want to have to make a third one only to watch him to die. And I was like, okay, go ahead and quit. Because at that point I was like, you're missing the complete point of this system if you think that your characters are meant to live forever, as well as there's no way for you to come back from being crippled. You're missing the complete point at that point. And that's when the GM's like explaining to you what's going to happen next. So it wasn't just him working on his own information and how the system worked. It was me telling him, this is how I'm going to rule this, and he ignored that. So next thing that happened is that, so he stopped playing. And then the next thing that happened, because everyone was injured, I was like, well, I gotta figure out some way of getting these people back into fighting shape, and I don't really want to put too much work into it. And they don't have any good medics on their team for some odd reason, so I was like, someone randomly shows up who's a medic and helps you. Yay. I don't know why I did that, though. That was probably too easy for them. Mostly because I was running the Against the Savages encounter, and essentially that campaign is basically essentially built up to watch players die. So I was like, I don't really want to have to be party to that, so I'll give you guys some support here and there, just to give you guys a semi-fighting chance. Seeing as you lost the whole player and everything. So, so I guess that's the moral of the story, is don't shoot your allies, because they're important too. And that's not a very good solution. Especially if you're going to sit there and complain about having to burn fate points because your decision didn't lead to a very satisfactory conclusion of you staying alive. I don't know why I said that story. I forgot my point. Oh, I guess my point was don't be a toxic tech priest and consider your comrades as throwaway cannon fodder. Don't be a guardsman who thinks you're a throwaway cannon fodder. And don't be a commissar who just execute his allies to resist the effects of fear, because that's also a bad idea, especially if you have a squad of 10. And essentially all that comes down to my way of running a game is usually I base my games off of running the hero's journey, or I base it off generic war movies. In this case, since it's only war, I was basing it off of any sort of war movie that you would seen. And in war movies, they don't execute their allies just because they're too scared. That I've never seen a war movie in which that happened. So I guess that's my little caveat there. And then again, the first way that he died was through some other stupid thing that he wanted to happen. It was a fight between him and an orc. He said that if I shoot the orc, I want his grenades to explode. Or if a grenade goes off in the orc's face, I want the grenades on him to explode. And I was like, well, you can't have that happen because otherwise it'll cause a chain of effects with dire consequences, setting off other grenades and stuff. And he was like, I don't care. And I was like, okay, so you are within blast radius of the grenade going off on his chest. The grenade goes off on his chest after I made a roll. Therefore, the grenade on his chest goes off, and because you're so close to him, the grenade on you goes off as well, and then it just goes back and forth until you're horribly crippled and dead almost as a result. He wasn't horribly crippled. He was heavily wounded at that state, which is basically if he had like 10 wounds, he had like 10 wounds damage taken. 10 wounds of damage taken. Also, the thing you were holding, which was a serval skull, has been blown to pieces because of the numerous explosions going off in your face that you somehow survived. So of course he had an issue with that, and I was like, I warned you ahead of time. I warned you a lot. So, which probably brings me to the point is don't make chain reactions with stuff blowing up. If a grenade goes off on someone and it blows up another grenade on someone else, or it blows up another grenade on them, that's probably a bad idea. It's probably a safety issue too, so I would avoid that. But if someone specifically targets a grenade with a weapon and shoots it, then I would probably allow it more, because it's more like a actual focused shot, like in Sniper Elite, where you would target the enemy's grenades to cause an explosion. But otherwise, I think I have ranted on enough. That's an hour. That's how I would run a game. That's my advice for running an only war game. Just try to make sure players aren't just going to go in with the mindset they're pointless cannon fodder. And then I like to base my only war games off of war movies I have seen. So there's always some sort of heroic moment for the players to have, or heroic sacrifice, and then the end of the campaign pops up. So, with all that said, if you have any questions, feel free to message me on Twitter. I hope you learned something here on how to make a regiment and characters and stuff. I'll save that entry, and then I'm going to go and find something to eat. Thank you for dropping by. Have a nice day.